Thanks to the three of you for your work and time you put in for this testimony and answering our questions. We'll have 5-minute rounds. I'm going to start out with Dr. Epstein and refer to the Office of Information Policy at DOJ and the Archives Office of Government Information Services. What steps could these offices take to improve the requester experience and FOIA administration across the government? And are there any statutory reforms that ought to be made?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I've had experience with both organizations, both as the executive director of a transparency group and during my time in the executive branch. The National Archives and Records Administration's Office of Government Information Services, my experience is when requesters look to avoid litigation, they often look to OGIS to kind of resolve the disputes, effectively to mediate those disputes. My experience is that OGIS often will notify the government agency that there is a requester who is looking for a solution, but ultimately takes the position that it's in the government agency's discretion whether to use the OGIS process. And so I think one legislative reform is to say that whether you go as far as saying that the agency must mediate, certainly to exercise good faith in mediating a dispute. And that, of course, reduce the amount of litigation. In terms of the Office of Information Policy of the Department of Justice, I think one of the very effective things that office does is it provides an enormous amount of analysis on new case law developing through the courts. And of course, as many of you know, as recently as at least when I was in the administration, about 20% of the workload of the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia is FOIA cases. And so being able to get that guidance from the Office of Information Policy is useful. Now, the thing that I would say about the Office of Information Policy is it is often misunderstood that it is simply just an entity within the Department of Justice. The Office of Information Policy is supposed to set FOIA policy for the entire executive branch. And I often think that it is an ignored resource where agencies often consult their own chief FOIA officers without recognizing that the Office of Information Policy has such experience that it can well advise the agencies. And I think anything Congress can do to make that office more robust and to work with chief FOIA officers at agencies would be very helpful.
Mr. Howell, March 20 of last year, the U.S. Government Accountability Office released a report showing that in government-wide, the request backlog has continued to climb over the past decade. Long response times and backlogs violate the law and run counter to the spirit of the law. In your experience, what impact have agency backlogs had on your use of FOIA?
So the general practice of the federal government to turn what should be an administrative process into a judicial one where you have to sue and enforce, to get the information that you seek has made it so only that, the very organized and resourced individuals can go and sue to get that information. So the net result is the American people are in the dark about a lot of their activities related to how their government is operating. That is why we've had to really scale up not only our FOIA outgoing to 100,000, but in 100 lawsuits. And I believe the proof is in the pudding with the list of documents and stories we have broken as a result of that. But it shouldn't work that way. The federal government should adapt to the year 2025, lean into technological advancements, using potentially AI and automation to get these documents out more quickly. It shouldn't be such a human-intensive process.
He just brought up AI, so a question to you, Dr. Epstein. From the past several years, the chief of FOIA Officers Council has considered impacts of artificial intelligence. The requester community, too, has debated the possible promises and perils of using AI. In your view, how could AI improve FOIA process?
Yeah, thank you, Senator. So I think one thing is that AI can be directly relevant to reading rooms. Often you will get agency reading rooms that, I mean, I just think about the FBI vault, where the ability to find useful documents is very difficult. It's not using the best kind of document discovery software. And I think there's at least two things. One is because so much of, I mean, virtually all agency records are now on the cloud, using AI as a tool for agencies to search for records would substantially reduce processing times, right? AI is effectively a predictive model that can locate, well, if a number of search terms are in this location, there is likely going to be search terms in similar locations, or at least relevant search terms. I think the other thing is that in contemporary times, a lot of transparency organizations are very pro-tech, which is to say, there's nothing that says that you can't have an API attached to government reading rooms that allows FOIA requesters to very efficiently download documents and then upload them into their own technological solutions. So that, I think, generally using AI in the federal government for transparency would be a good thing.
Senator Durbin.
Thank you.